Welcome, my name's Jeff Bartels. I'm an infrastructure technical specialist here at Autodesk, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Jerry Bartels. Our other colleague, who's usually with us, Dana Judge, was not able to make it today. She was called away to another engagement. In today's 30-minute workout, we're going to look at how we can use fields to create smart text in Civil 3D. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the 30-minute workout concept, I'm sure you'll agree if you've ever taken a Civil 3D course in the past, you know there's never enough time to cover everything that the application has to offer. Typically, during a class, you focus on the need-to-know functionality. What do you need to know to do your job? The other features and tools and workflows are the type of things that you just pick up on your own over a career using the application. So our goal in putting together these 30-minute workouts was to create a resource that can be used to fill in some of those gaps and provide users the most value for their Autodesk investment. A couple ground rules. Since these sessions are just 30 minutes long, our goal is to always start on time and end on time. Many of the examples that we show during the session will be abstract in nature. We do that for a reason. This way we can focus solely on how a tool works. Once you understand the function of the tool, you can apply it to whatever situation works best for you. These sessions are always recorded, so you don't have to worry about taking notes if you don't want to. Everybody who has registered for the session will receive a copy of the recording. If you have questions during the session, go ahead and put those into the Q&A pane. Jerry is going to be fielding those as we go. Likewise, if you would like a follow-up one-on-one call with one of us, go ahead and put that in the QA pane as well. We always enjoy speaking with other users. Our agenda today, we're going to talk about a concept called fields. Fields are essentially smart text, and the feature was introduced in AutoCAD 2005. We'll do a quick introduction of those today, and then we're going to look at how we can use fields in some practical examples. I have a few of them listed here on screen. That being said, there is way more we can do with fields than just what is listed here. Our goal today is to get you acclimated to the tool and get you engaged with it and ready for further exploration. We'll talk about some of the settings that are associated with fields, and then I've got bonus content on there. I've kind of held a couple things back. In the event we get to everything that I want to talk about today, and we still have some time left in the session, then we can get into the bonus content. If not a problem. We can just push that to a future session. As always, this is going to be a PowerPoint free zone. We are going to be working live in the application for the duration of our time together today. So now that our housekeeping is taken care of, let me adjust a couple of interface things here on screen. First, let me start by saying that I'm working in Civil 3D 2021. Having said that, what we look at today is going to work regardless of the version of Civil 3D or AutoCAD you may be using. I happen to be in a drawing currently that kind of represents a portion of a subdivision plan. If I zoom in, you can see that I have a storm sewer network here, and I have a Civil 3D label that's been applied to this structure. The nice thing about the Civil 3D labels is they point to the data associated with their respective objects. So if the data behind this object changes, for instance, let me come over to my properties palette here, and maybe we'll renumber this manhole 500. As soon as I hit enter, you can see how that label updates. Likewise, if I click this structure and move it over, when I drop this, watch the station and offset label. You can see how that updates accordingly. By having these Civil 3D labels, they're essentially maintenance-free, because as my design changes, these labels update automatically. Now, knowing that, not everything in your Civil 3D project may be a Civil 3D object, like alignments, profiles, sections, things like that. You may at times need to label AutoCAD objects, or maybe you need to label some metadata that's tied to the drawing. In that case, we wouldn't use a Civil 3D label that wouldn't apply, so you may be wondering if there's other ways to create maintenance-free labels, and we can do that using a concept called fields. I'm going to jump to another drawing. This drawing represents a plan and profile. Let me jump to model space for a second. I just want to show you how this was built. You can see my view frame group that was used to create the layouts. The three layouts exist in this file, so when I jump out here, we can see this is the sheet that we would typically plot. Now, I would like to create a plot stamp. I want to create some text on this title block, and I want the text to label the file name of this file. Let's zoom in. To get this label, I'm going to create a field. Fields are essentially text. That's all they are. It's just text that points to metadata associated with your drawing or the objects in a drawing. Since fields are text, we can incorporate them into single-line text, multi-line text, multi-leaders, tables, and block attribution. Pretty much any place you can create text, you can incorporate a field. Let's say I would like to create a little plot stamp here that's going to have the file name of this file. I'm going to come up on the Annotate ribbon tab and create some multi-line text. I'll drag out to set my column width. And then if I zoom in, I could type file name colon, and then right here, if I wanted to, I can see the file name right there. I could type the file name in. Unfortunately, that would just be static. So if this file was saved with a different name, I would have to take and update this label manually. Instead, I'm going to use a field. I'm going to point to the metadata associated with this file that holds that file name. To insert a field, there's several ways we can do it. One way is by clicking the field button here in the contextual ribbon, or if I right-click in the text editor, I can choose Insert Field from here, or we can use the keyboard shortcut Control-F. This is actually my favorite way to use it. I use that most of the time. When the field dialog box comes up, we can see the sheer number of metadata items that we can label in our drawing. Now, if we look at the top left corner of the screen, we can see that currently we're looking at the All category, so this is the list of all of them. If you're familiar with the fields that you want to get, you can just grab them from here. Likewise, if you want to shorten this list up, make it a little more manageable, you can select a different category. For instance, I'm going to choose Document in this case. These are all the fields from that entire list that are associated with documents. From here, I'll select File Name. I'm going to extract the file name property from this drawing and incorporate it into a label. Once I choose that field, I can see the formatting of how that field is going to look in the drawing. I can adjust the formatting using these options down below. I'm going to leave that all as uppercase for right now. Since I'm selecting a file name, notice I've got additional toggles here. I could label the file name only, I could label the path only, or I could label the path and file name. Typically, I use this option. That way on the printed sheet, I can see the name of the file and I know exactly where it's saved on the server. I also have a toggle here I can use to turn off the file extension. Let's go with this. I'll click OK, and then I'll click on Screen, and I'll back up. Notice that the field has a gray background. This visually separates it from other text so I can tell where the fields are. Fortunately, the gray background does not plot. In the event you didn't want to see that background, there is a system variable called field display. By default, that's set to 1, which means it's turned on. If I set that to 0 and press Enter, you can see that it turns it off. I'm going to put things back the way they were. We'll go to Recent Input here, Field Display, and I'll turn that back on. Okay, so this is now maintenance-free text. Every time I save this drawing, it's going to maintain the location and it's going to have the file name. Let's go a little bit further. Since this is multi-line text I'm creating here, we'll add to my plot stamp. Maybe I'd like to incorporate when this file was last saved. I'll put saved on, and then I will do Control-F. And then for that, I'm going to go to, I think if I go to date and time, that category, notice there's a field that tells me when the file was last saved. If I look over to the right, we can see the sheer number of options that we have for creating that text. I'm going to label this with the date and the time all the way down to the seconds. Let's click OK. And then we'll find out who saved it. I'll type by, colon, and then Control-F to put in another field. For this, I think if I go to Document, there's a field here, Last Saved By. It'll grab the login name of who saved this file last. So I'll choose that, and here we can see my login name at the top. Note that we can adjust the formatting using these options below. I'm going to go with all uppercase here. Let's click OK, and then I'll click on Screen. Fields are just text. That's just an M-text item, but I've got some entries that are in there that happen to be looking at metadata associated with this file. Let's test it. I'm going to save this drawing. To save it, I'll come up and click Save As. And I'm going to save this in the same directory where my other drawings are stored. I'm going to call this Sample. And when I click Save, watch the file name, watch the save date. You can see how those update. So this is now a truly maintenance-free piece of text. But you can add this to a title block that you use for all of your drawings, and then as you drag it into files, it's automatically going to grab that information. Let's take it a little bit further. Since this is a plot stamp, I may want to include the date when this was plotted. Plot it on, Control-F, and I'm going to use maybe the plot category. There we go, plot date. This will grab metadata that's associated with when this file was printed. I'm going to use the same formatting for the date, and I'll click OK. And then I'll click on Screen. Notice the field in this case. Anytime you see the 4 dashes, it means that there's no data in that category, which stands to reason because this file has not been printed. Let's go ahead and print it. I'm old-fashioned. I'm just going to type plot. We'll plot the individual sheets. This is going to print to PDF. I'll just save this on my machine. And when that's finished, let's zoom in here a little bit and we'll drag down. and you can see there's my plot stamp. So now, every time I have a printed sheet, I've got the file name and where it's located. I know who saved it and when, and I can tell when this sheet was printed. All of it's handled through fields. All of it's automated. It's just extracting that metadata from the drawing itself. Let's close this, and then I'm going to close my little bubble there. Note when I come back to the drawing, the field here has not yet been updated. Fields are updated when you plot, when you save, or when you do a regen. You can see that I had the correct information in my plot, so we never have to worry about that. If I want this to update on screen, I can simply type RE to regen the drawing, and then I can see that. Now, after you've seen this, you may be wondering if there's ways to create your own metadata that you can incorporate into a drawing and then incorporate into labels. And we can do that as well. If I go to the Application menu, we'll come down to Drawing Utilities, and I'll choose Drawing Properties. On these tabs, we will find properties that we can fill out, that we can extract using fields. You can see title, subject, author, comments. If I come down to the Custom tab, I can actually create my own properties. I once had someone ask me if it was possible to identify what Civil 3D template was used to create a file. Well, there's no programming way to do that, but I could tag the template, and then any drawing that's been created from that, I could have a field that pulls that value. We can do that very easily from here. I can say add. I want to add a custom property, and I'll call this template version. And then I can give this a value. We'll say 2021, and I'll click OK. Let's click OK. I would do that in my template file, and then every new drawing that's created from that template would automatically have that custom property associated with the file. And then in my title block, for instance, let me come down to the plot stamp that I've been working on. I'm going to type template used, and then I'll press Control F to grab a field. And I could get this from the All category, or to kind of narrow things down, I'm going to choose Document. When I choose Document, notice here's some of those things that we saw a second ago. Author, comments, keywords, subject, title. There's that template version. That's the custom property that I made. I can select that, choose my formatting, and I'll click OK. Click on Screen. So if that plot stamp was incorporated into the template file that you use for your layouts, as you drag layouts in, it's automatically going to extract that property, and it would be very easy to tell which template was used to create the file. So this is an example of using fields to label metadata associated with a drawing. We can also use fields to label data that's associated with the objects in our file. That's probably the most powerful way to use fields. Let's look at that. I'm going to go to this other drawing. Here I have a plat of survey, and over on the right, just beneath the north arrow, we can see some text that labels the scale of this drawing. If I double-click in the viewport, we can see that matches the scale that's assigned to the viewport, which is good. Let me double-click out. Wouldn't it be nice if I could have this text tied to the viewport, such that if the scale of the viewport changed, this text would change automatically? We can do that. Let me go to the Home tab, and I am going to turn on my viewport layer. And then I'm going to double-click to edit this text. Now, this is just single-line text. In here, I'm going to delete this text, and I will insert a field. Control F. The field I'm going to use in this case is Object. I would like to extract a property from a selected object and incorporate that into a label. Let's click the Select Object button. What object am I looking at? This viewport. Here we can see all of the properties that I could extract from that viewport and put into a label. These would all be maintenance-free items that I could label. From here, I'm going to choose Standard Scale. And you can see that scale, that's the name that's associated with the scale on the viewport. That looks good. Let me click OK. I will then press Escape. Notice we see the gray boundary. That is now a field, and it is dynamically linked to this viewport. So if I change the scale of this to maybe 40 scale, as soon as I do a regen, we see that update. Once again, we'll put things back the way they were. Let's open that up. I'll flip that back to 30, and I'll do another regen. Let's look at another example. I'm going to go back to my sample drawing that I made. Another place where people use fields, especially in a Civil 3D environment, is to label assemblies. All of the label styles that we have in Civil 3D are fantastic. One that we don't have yet, we really don't have an assembly label style, one that would put the name of the assembly down below. Even though I don't have it in Civil 3D, I can create a maintenance-free label using a field. I'm going to go to my Annotate ribbon tab here, and I will select a text style that has the appropriate height. And then I'm just going to create some text. I'll type text. This will just be single line. Could be multi-line, could be a multi-leader if I wanted to. I'll click to place that, and then I'll hit Control F to put in a field. I would like the field to be based on an object. Let me click Select Objects, and I'll select the assembly. This shows me all the properties that I can extract from that assembly. I'm going to choose Name, and you can see that's pulling the name of the assembly for me. I can adjust the formatting. I'm going to go with uppercase. I'll click OK when finished. This is now a maintenance-free label. In the event I select that assembly and change its name, I'm going to call this Road, for instance. As soon as I do a regen, we can see that update. Now, what if I wanted to use this label for another assembly? I'm going to copy it. I'm horribly old-fashioned. I just typed that in. Let's copy this down. To make this work, I just have to point this field to this object. So how do we edit a field? Well, first I'm going to double-click to get access to the text editor. To edit a field, a couple ways we can do it. I can right-click on it and choose Edit Field. Or I can simply double-click the field itself. It'll take me right back into the editor. In fact, it remembers all of the previous settings. It's Object. I'm going to select Object. I will select this object for this label, and I want its name, and I'll click OK. So now this is a maintenance-free label associated with this assembly. Fantastic. Let's look at another example. We'll take this concept a little further. I can use fields to do calculations. In this example, I have 3 circles, A, B, and C. I would like to label the total area of those circles. This is just a single line text item. I'm going to put my cursor where I want that field to go, and then I'll press Control F. And then the field I'll use is Formula. Formula allows you to extract properties from selected objects and then apply calculations to them. Just imagine what you can do with that. I'll come down into the expression area here, and to build my formula, I can essentially have fields within fields. If I right-click, for instance, I can say Insert Field. I would like an object-based field tied to this object. I would like to extract the area. You can see some of the other items here we can pull from a circle. I'd like the area, and I'm going to keep the default formatting. Let's click OK. And then I will add, right-click, Insert Field, Object. Which object? Let's add this one. I want its area, and I'll click OK. And then finally, I'll click Add, right-click, Insert Field, Object. Which object? Circle C. I want the area, and I'll click OK. So here's my formula. When I'm finished with my formula, I'll click Evaluate. That will do the calculation up here at the top, and then I can use these buttons to adjust the formatting. I can change the units if I want to. Currently, decimal is what I'm going to go with. Precision, maybe we'll knock that down to 2 decimal spaces. You can see as I make the adjustments, the preview updates. I can also go into additional format if I want to make even more changes. I can apply a conversion factor if I want to. I can add a suffix. I'm going to type square feet. If you add a suffix, make sure and put a space in front of it. That'll give you a space between the field and the suffix. It's nice you can see the preview here. You can see exactly what you're going to get. You can assign number separators. For instance, if this ever gets into the thousands, I want to include a comma. And then I can suppress zeros if I want to. I'm just going to keep the rest of the defaults, and I'll click OK and OK. Now, if these items change, when I do a regen, you can see that that area updates accordingly. Knowing that, let me mention that the calculations that you do are only limited by your creativity. If I copy this down, maybe I'd like to get the average area of these shapes. Here I'd like to edit this field. I'll double-click on it. And then we'll take the formula and maybe we'll put parentheses on either side, and then I will divide this by 3. Let's click Evaluate. There is the average area. I could adjust the formatting if I want to. For right now, I'm just going to come down and click OK. Those are now maintenance-free labels. As I make adjustments here and do a regen, you can see how everything updates. Typically, when we create formulas within the AutoCAD or the Civil 3D platform, a lot of times we do it inside a table. Fields work great when we're working with tables. They kind of go hand in hand. Here, I have a table. This is just an AutoCAD table that I created a little earlier. And I have a polyline that I've generated that we'll say represents a bituminous pad. I would like to use these items together to do some calculations. First, I'd like to pull the area of this shape into my table. To do that, I'll double-click in this cell to get access to the text, and then I will press Control F. I'm going to create a field. I want to create a field based on an object. Which object? This polyline. I'd like to extract the area, and I'm going to keep the default formatting, and I'll click OK. And then I'll click on Screen. So we can see there's the field right there. Maybe I want to calculate volumes. Here you can see maybe I've got two courses, surface course and aggregate. I've already got some values in there. If I'd like to calculate cubic feet, I can do the calculations right here within the table, and we can do it a lot like we do in Microsoft Excel. I can say this is cell B2 times B4, enter, and this one would be B2 times B5. Maybe one day we can do a session just on tables. These are very powerful in their own right. Now that I've done that, as I make changes to the shape and I do a regen, the area is pulled from the shape to the table and it takes and updates these volumes. We can go even further. I can pull data from a table cell into another annotation. We'll do one of these just for the sake of time. Maybe I'd like to pull the surface course volume and I would like that in cubic yards. This is an mtext item. Once again, fields are just text. That's all they are. In this text item, I'm going to press Control F to insert a field, and I'm going to choose Formula. On the Formula tab, you can see these buttons. These are the ones that allow us to use tables. I'm going to choose Cell. It's asking me, select table cell you'd like to extract. I'll just click here, and you can see there's the programming code that's going to pull the data from that cell. And I would like that divided by 27. That's what'll convert it into cubic yards. Let's click Evaluate. There's my value. I would like that decimal, maybe 2 decimal spaces. Let's put a suffix on this, maybe cubic yards. This looks good. I'll click OK and OK, and then I'll click on Screen. So now, if I change my object and do a regen, that updates the table, which updates the volumes, which then turns around and updates annotations. This is just a simple example. Imagine some of the things that you can do just with fields to create maintenance-free annotations. Let's do one more thing. We can also use fields to navigate a drawing or drawings. Many times we navigate files using the hyperlink tool. And, if you try and put a hyperlink into an AutoCAD or a Civil 3D drawing, it's kind of a double-edged sword because you add the hyperlinks, but you really, unless you know they're there, how do you know what to click on? Using fields, I can create a hyperlink and I can actually put text in there that says, hey, click here to go someplace else. In this case, I've got just some view frames. Just imagine if I could maybe put a piece of text in here that says, click this text to visit the layout associated with these view frames. Now, in this case, the layouts are in this drawing, but they don't have to be. Let me zoom in, and I'm going to change my text style here. Maybe we'll do viewports. And I'm going to create a text label. I'll just type text. Could use mtext. Okay, it's just a text object. I'm just using single line for the interest of speed. Once I put the label in, I'll hit Control F to add a field. And then I could grab this from the entire list, but if I use the linked category, it's a little easier to find. There's hyperlink. I'll click hyperlink, and with hyperlinks, we can link to a file, we can link to a web page, or we could link to a target. A target would be your tabs, essentially, model space or the 3 layouts. Targets would also be a saved view. So if I click target in this drawing, I can see those items right here. I would like this to link to layout 1, and then this is the text that I would like to appear. I'll just say Control-click here to view layout. And I'll click OK and OK. Now that that's been created, it's outside the view frame, so it's not going to show up on the sheet. But if I hover over this, you can see that icon. If I Control-click at this point, it'll take me right to that layout. At this point, you may be wondering, could I create a link like that that could take me to another drawing? And the answer is yes, we can. If I back up, right here, I have a couple of block symbols that represent road closure barricades. If I jump to my general notes drawing, you can see here on the general notes layout, I've got a detail for the road closure. I would like it maybe to have a hyperlink where I could click by those symbols to go right to this detail. And instead of going right to the layout, I'd like to go to a view of that detail. So let me zoom in on that, and I'll create a saved view. To do that, I'll just type View, I'll click New, and then I'll give it a name. I'll call it Closure Detail. Let's click OK. I will then click OK. I will save. Let me just verify because I'm going to close this. There we go. We can see that that's associated with the layouts. And I will jump out of this drawing. Let's go back to my sample file, and let's create some text here. Text. I'll click on Screen, and I'm going to type Control F. I want to insert a field. I'm going to insert a hyperlink. I want a hyperlink to a file. Now, I want to go to a separate file. Let me choose that, and I'll click OK. Once I've selected the file, I can come down and choose Target. Now it will show me the information within that file. I can see there's the two tabs, and on the General Notes tab, here's a saved view. Let me go ahead and click OK on that, and then I can change this text to say Control-click here to view detail. So in this case, the text that I'm creating, you might put that on a layer that's set to no plot. Okay, you can handle this however you like. The nice thing is just trying to show you that with a field, we can create smart text that will take you to another drawing. If I Control-click on this, it will find that drawing, it will open it, it will take me to that layout, and then it will zoom in on that specific view that we saved. That's that. Let's close out of this, and I just want to show you one more thing. We are quickly coming up on the top of the hour. It's not really common, but in the event you wanted to convert a field back into text, if I go into the editor here, if I right-click on a field, there's an option here I can say Convert Field to Text. If I choose that, now it's not a hyperlink anymore, it's just generic text. So if you felt you had to do that, that would be the way you can convert it into regular text. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint here. So today we talked about the concept of fields. Fields represent text that's just pointed to metadata. That metadata can be drawing related or it can be tied to the objects in your file. I would strongly recommend that you experiment with this and just, look for different ways that you can create these smart maintenance-free labels in your drawings. That being said, if you're labeling a civil object, you're better off using a Civil 3D label style. That's the best way to go because that's going to be tied to all the data. These type of field labels would be good for drawing metadata and any place where a Civil 3D label would not be applicable. We could use these for calculations. We looked at how we can use the hyperlinks to navigate drawings. We just scratched the surface on what's possible here. Just want to make sure you're aware of that. Jump in and take a look at these a little closer. You'll be amazed at what you can do. We also talked about just a couple of the settings. Field display allows us to turn off that gray background, and we saw how we could convert them back into typical text if we wanted to. With that, I'm going to ask Jerry if there are any questions at this point that have gone unanswered.
No, we are all caught up with questions.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us. Let me also give a special thank you. The sessions that we've had to this point, we've had a very nice, large contingent of folks that have been attending that are outside the United States. We've got a bunch of global attendees. And we want to tell you that we know you're out there and we really appreciate you guys coming by because we know that in many cases you're attending this session outside of normal business hours. So we can't thank you enough for spending time with us. Once again, on behalf of Jerry Bartels and myself, I want to say thank you guys for coming, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks.